everyone get this? Just so you know, I don't like this at all. Hi, I'm Robin Cox. I'm teaching monoprinting at Remainders Creative Reuse. And the 21st Century Women in BIPOC Artists Program is what this is a part of. And so the artist that I chose is Elizabeth Catlett. You all have a printout on that. And she was born in 1915. She passed away in 2012. I'm not going to read through this whole biography because you have it. But basically, she's best known for how she depicted the Black American experience. Her parents were educators, but her grandparents were enslaved people. And so she really drew from that and learned a lot from her grandmother's stories about how that world was. She had a lot of education. She was very well educated, and she got a fellowship in 1946 to go to Mexico City. And there she learned a lot of different skills, particularly block printing. And she did a lot of sculpture, which I haven't outlined here, but then she did a lot of graphic design and printing work. And so her printing work was very painterly. She used a lot of textures, a lot of layers. And so that's why I chose her, because monoprinting is all about making one dynamic print using a lot of different layers and textures, and you can add imagery to it. I don't have that because it's more like collage, but particularly textures of paint color and different additions to the print as you go, okay? So feel free to read through this. So I'll show you a couple of examples. Main thing with the monoprinting, when you use this brayer, there's a glass plate, and that's your mixing plate. We're using acrylic paint because oils are very difficult to work. There's just a lot of cleanup involved. So the paint needs to have this retarder added to it, so the drying time is longer and you have more time to work with the paint. So there are also these pallets here for mixing your paint with the retarder and then getting it onto your plate. I just did it all in one spot. So you can see, I'll do this first. So the brayer is better used for background more than like what the image is going to look like, and then you add things to it to get the image on top. So if you run over a couple of colors, it doesn't have to be a big involved process, because the more times you go back and forth, the muddier it will get. So try to think of the brayer as just a giant paintbrush that you're putting color on to spread on this plate to get a background, okay? And there's a lot of newsprint here. So when you do the plate, it doesn't have to be a lot. Like this would be a very colorful but light background. And if you print this, you can go back and print another layer. You just want to be careful not to muddy everything up with the brayer. If you're just using one color, like if you just want it to be a solid blue, then just put as much as you want, because you don't have to worry about the colors mixing. And you can do that. Let me see if I can, I might ruin it, but you can also make it almost like a plaid. I don't know if that'll work. But the beauty of this process is the randomness of it. Like, so there's that, and oh, actually I kind of like that blob of yellow. So try to be real free with it. And if you don't like it, just wipe the plate off and do another one. It's very forgiving. And there's rags and water in the back.
Yeah, Yeah, I wanted to know, is our print gonna be the same size as the plastic?
Your print will be exactly the same size as this plastic. Now there are a lot of these small pieces, so you could make like a triptych. You could do, 3, whatever you lay on here, that's going to be your print. Okay, so and the thing about this is set to the thickness of these plastic plates. So we can't change out to other plates because then we'd have to keep adjusting it. Okay, but there are a lot of different sizes here. These are the biggest, if you're super adventurous. Just make sure all the plastic is off of both sides. So I'm just gonna leave that. I'm gonna just take maybe one piece of texture. And there's textures here. We have all these that I don't know if you can see them clearly, but these are texture plates that were made with glue. So you also can just do the brayer over these textures and then run these through the press. They're about the same thickness as the plastic, but if you put a plastic the same size behind it, it'll be a little tight, but it'll print properly because this might not be thick enough, okay? We just have to kind of nudge it through. So let me print that, and one of the things that needs to be done, I'm going to go down here. Because the paper is very stiff, it needs to be wet. So you dip it in here, and if it's a thin piece of paper, don't leave it in very long. But it's to make the paper more malleable. And then blot it. And do me a favor, if you guys are working and this towel starts to get super wet, let me know so we can change it out. One time we were doing it and it was just soaking wet and no one said anything. I was like, oh no. And I know it's a little bit of a walk, but. So take a piece of newsprint. It keeps the ink from getting on these blankets. These are called blankets. And then you can do it one of two ways. You can set the plate on and put the paper over it. I prefer to put the paper first because then I can see where this is positioned. And you just have to be careful because it's going to be upside down. So you place that on the paper and then put another piece of newsprint. And you can keep using the newsprint, but if it's wet, it's just newsprint. It's okay to throw away. Put this down. And then run it through. And you'll feel a little bit of resistance when you get to the plate. That was all right. And then back. And since we're sharing the press, that's why I want you to spend time on your plates, not just run them through. And lift this off. So you can see it's quite light because I didn't put very much paint on here. If I wanted to say you want, I want that to look more like the ocean, you can go back and paint into it. Just don't make big blobs of paint because they're gonna squish out. Just make a really light color. So I'm just showing you this so you can see. You can work back into it as many layers as you want. Put this back. If you don't want to dip it in the water again. And then just, you'll see the line. There's a real clear line of where the plate goes. and then just do it again. So it's pretty forgiving. It's very free flowing. If you work in a lot of detail and want it to be really perfect, keep in mind the paint is drying as you work. Even though there's retarder in it, it's still drying. You could soak your paper longer if you want to make sure the paint comes out on it. But it's a very free flowing process. So you can see, can you see that? So there I just added more detail to it. And I could go back 10 times if I wanted. I could put a leaf or something and do a silhouette of some kind. Here's a couple of examples. This didn't have a background, it just had the leaves and then the texture on top of it. I didn't bring any leaves today, but there's a lot down in the driveway. This one I glued these, where are they? These tea papers to the paper first, just with a light layer of glue, and then did the background thing. So this is just a brayer with turquoise and red, and the red dots came out, and then just a plant run through there. Okay.
You added ink to it?
No, it's just a plant. The red and turquoise and all of that is just from the brayering on the plate. I had one of these larger plates. Then I just put the plant on top. If you do put something on the top, when you lift it off, it's gonna be inked. So if I put this netting, actually I'll show you. Do you cut a piece? I'll use this. So if I put this on here, I'm just gonna go for it. And for that, actually, I probably should use the brayer. Then I could put this here. My paper's getting a little dry, but if I put this on here, the color probably, it won't come out the first time. I mean, I don't think it will. So if you're using wires and then just make sure it's really smoothed down. So I'm doing this more to get the ink on the netting than to get the netting pattern on the painting. Yeah. So the netting pattern came out a little bit, but it's just like intaglio, which is when you make an impression and there's no paint or ink. But now this is inked. So I could put it back on here. And remember, you always have to have a plastic plate. I'm just gonna use this one because it's faster. Or also see the pattern on there? I could use this or the wire. Let me use this. It's all just experiment, as you can see. So I just want to see how much of that pattern comes out. There's not a lot of paint on there. I'll go quickly because I know you guys want to work. So the pattern of the wire came out. See? And if I put the wire on there and it was soft, the wire will make some indentation. So it'll be more than just the paint. It will be the pattern of the wire. See if I can get that. So there's a lot of different layering and different things you can do. you can see, I can pass this around. There's a little bit of an indentation of the wire. I kind of like the way this turned out. Okay, does anyone have any questions?
No, I can't remember. When do you put the white bottle?
This retarder?
The retarder, when do you put that?
You mix your paint first. So you can mix, I just mixed mine on the palette because it was easier. So if you have about a quarter size drop of paint, you want maybe a third of it, a third of the size to be the retarder. And then you want the paint to be kind of the consistency of ink. You don't want it to be too liquid or too firm. And that you can just experiment. You just don't want it to be thick. If it's thick, it's just gonna squish all over the place. So that's why it's important to work in layers and not just belabor a picture on the plate. Because if you keep working the picture on the plate, it's gonna get too much paint and then it's just gonna squish. Okay? So that's the process. There's a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of texture stuff here. There's some, rubber plates. With these, you just have to experiment with the thickness. Yeah, like these rubber ones, I think if you're gonna use them, maybe put 2 together to get the similar thickness of the blue plates. And we can get started. If you wanna come up, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. So let's say you did your background on the plastic sheet, and then you wanted to add another layer. Do you go for another piece of plastic, or do you wipe it clean and put something else on?
You can use another piece, but it's better if you clean as you go. So there's a cleaning bucket in back. There's, I try not to use paper towels. We have tons and tons of just terry cloth towels. So don't be afraid to use those to wipe off the paint and just launder off, and it's not so wasteful. But these, we should change out. But as long as they're clean, just leave them there.
The gray thing you just showed us, is that in